He thought he was buying a cheap cabin until an Apache woman claimed she was his wife. The deed was already in his hand when the arrow hit the fence post. Cole Hardin pulled his horse up hard, the animal screaming sideways in the dust, and he yanked the brim of his hat down like that would do anything against an arrow. He looked at the post. The arrow was still quivering, planted deep in the wood 2 inches from where his knee had been a second ago. He did not move. The canyon behind the cabin was quiet in the way that canyons get quiet when something inside them is watching you. Cole had ridden 4 days out of Tucson to get to this place. A lawyer named Grover Finch had sold him the land for $42 and a promissory note, called it a bargain, called it remote but peaceful. Nearweist called it an investment in the future of the Arizona Territory. Grover Finch had soft hands and wore a vest with brass buttons and had never once in his life sat 4 days on a horse through desert heat. Cole had figured that out somewhere around day 2. He figured it out completely now, staring at the arrow in his fence post. The cabin itself was small and low, built from rough-cut timber that had gone gray in the sun. There was a stone well beside it, a lean-to for horses on the east side, a vegetable patch, gone dry, but the furrows were still visible. Someone had worked this land. Someone had cared about it. Cole swung down from his horse slowly, keeping his hands visible, keeping his breathing even. He looped the reins around the fence rail and stood still. "I am not armed for a fight," he said to the canyon. Nothing answered. He was 31 years old, lean in the way of men who never had enough to eat growing up, with a jaw that had been broken once and healed slightly wrong. He had spent 6 years as a cattle hand, 2 years as a railroad surveyor, and 1 year doing something he did not talk about. He was not a man who scared easy, but he had enough sense to know the difference between brave and stupid. He walked to the cabin door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open. The inside was dark and smelled of dried sage, and something else, something faintly sweet he could not name. There was a sleeping mat on the floor, a clay pot on the stone shelf, a folded blanket deep red with a pattern of geometric shapes he recognized as Apache work. Hanging from the ceiling beam were bundles of dried herbs, bound with strips of rawhide. And on the back wall, someone had drawn a series of marks in charcoal, evenly spaced, like a calendar or a count. This was not an abandoned cabin. Cole stepped back outside. He looked at the canyon again. He looked at the arrow in the post. He looked at the deed in his hand, the ink already going soft from the sweat of his palm. He sat down on the step of the cabin and waited. An hour passed. The sun dropped toward the canyon rim, and the shadows stretched long and cool across the dirt. A hawk circled twice and left. Cole drank from his canteen and did not move. She came out of the canyon on foot without a sound, and he did not hear her until she was 20 yards away. She walked straight toward him, unhurried, carrying no visible weapon. She was perhaps 25, and with dark eyes that gave nothing away, and a bearing that made the ground she walked on seem like it belonged to her. She stopped 10 feet from him. She looked at the deed in his hand. She looked at him. She looked at his horse. "That paper means nothing here," she said. Her English was clear and precise, with an accent he could not place. Cole looked at the paper. He looked at her. Grover Finch disagrees. Grover Finch is a liar. Cole thought about that for a moment. "That is very possibly true," he said. She did not sit. She did not relax. She stood the way people stand when they are deciding something. "My husband built this cabin," she said. "His name was Caleb Marsh. He died here 2 winters ago. This land was his. When he died, it became mine." Cole turned the deed over in his hands. Grover Finch's signature was on it. There was also a seal from the Territorial Land Office. and a stamp that was supposed to look official. Cole was not a lawyer, but he had spent enough time around documents to know what legitimate paperwork felt like. This did not feel like legitimate paperwork. "Your husband's name was Caleb Marsh," he repeated. "Yes." "And he is buried here?" She turned her head slightly toward the canyon. That was all. Cole folded the deed and put it in his breast pocket. He stood up. She watched him, unmoving. He was 6 feet tall, and she was half a foot shorter, and she did not look even slightly concerned about that difference. "My name is Cole Hardin," he said. "I paid $42 for this land, and I rode 4 days to get here. I am not a man who takes well to being cheated, but I am also not a man who takes someone's home." She said nothing. "I am going to ride back to town," he said. "I am going to find Grover Finch, and I am going to get to the bottom of this." "If you go back to that town," she said, "you will not find Grover Finch." Cole stopped. "Why not?" Her eyes moved to the arrow in the post. "Because Grover Finch is not the one you need to find." The canyon had gone fully dark now, the last light burning orange on the upper rim. A coyote called somewhere distant and hollow. Cole looked at the arrow. He looked at her. He had the particular feeling of a man who has stepped into something much larger than a land dispute. "Then who do I need to find?" he asked. She turned and walked back toward the canyon. At the edge of the shadow, she stopped without turning around. "So spend the night," she said. "Not in the cabin, in the lean-to. At sunrise, I will show you something." She walked into the dark. Cole stood there a long time. Then he unsaddled his horse, led it to the lean-to, spread his bedroll on the hay-covered ground, and lay there staring at the ceiling boards while the desert cooled around him. He did not sleep much. At some point past midnight, he heard her moving inside the cabin, heard the faint sound of something being ground in the clay pot, smelled the smoke of a small fire. He lay still. Whatever Grover Finch had sold him, it was not a cheap cabin. He was beginning to understand that $42 might be the least costly thing about this transaction. Cole was up before the sun touched the canyon walls. He fed his horse from the saddlebag grain, and drank the last cold inch of water from his canteen, and stood in the lean-to doorway, watching the dark shapes of the rocks turn slowly from black to purple to rust. Her name, she told him at sunrise, was Nara. She did not offer it easily. She came out of the cabin carrying 2 clay cups and handed him one without a word. It held something hot and bitter that was not coffee, but was not entirely unlike it. He drank it. She sat on the step and watched the canyon fill with morning light. "Caleb named this place Dry Fork Station," she said. "He planned to run cattle here. He spent 3 years building what you see." Cole looked around at the cabin, the well, the lean-to, the dry garden. 3 years in this desert heat. "He did good work," he said. "He was a good man." She said it flat, without sentiment, like the way people say true things they have already grieved completely. Cole let that sit. Who is behind the false deed? Nara stood and walked to the fence post. She pulled the arrow out with one clean movement, looked it over, slid it under her arm. "A man named Decker Price. He runs the land office in Red Rock. He has been taking Apache land, Mexican land, widow land, any land without a man to fight for it. He pays men like Grover Finch to make paperwork. He sells the paperwork to men like you." "Men like me," Cole repeated. "Men who are new to the territory and do not know better." Cole did not take offense, because she was not wrong. He had ridden in from Texas 6 weeks ago with $200 and a plan to start over. The plan had been simple: cheap land, cattle, a quiet life. And he had walked into Grover Finch's office on his second day in Tucson because there was a hand-lettered sign in the window that said, "Land available. All titles clear." He had been stupid in the particular way that hope makes people stupid. "How many others?" he asked. "6 that I know of. Probably more." "And the law?" Nara looked at him with those flat, dark eyes. "The sheriff in Red Rock is Decker Price's cousin." Cole sat down on the fence rail. He turned his cup in his hands. "All right," he said. He was quiet for a while. "What was it you wanted to show me?" She led him into the canyon on foot. The trail was narrow, and she moved through it like she had walked it 1,000 times, which she probably had. Cole followed, watching his footing on the loose shale. 20 minutes in, the canyon widened into a small bowl ringed by red rock walls. There was a dry creek bed running through the center, and on the far wall someone had carved initials into the stone. CM, and below it, a date, 1864. Against the base of the wall, partly covered by a flat slab of sandstone, was a grave. Cole took off his hat. Beside the grave was something else. A metal box, rusted at the corners, half buried in the soil. Nara dug it out with her hands, pulled it free, brushed the dirt off the lid. "Caleb kept his papers here," she said. "The real papers." Inside the box, wrapped in oilskin to keep the desert moisture off, were documents. Cole spread them on the flat rock and read them carefully. A deed of purchase from 1862, signed by a land agent in Santa Fe, and a letter from the territorial governor's office acknowledging Caleb Marsh as the legal owner of the property known as Dry Fork Station. A survey map with official stamps, every one of them legitimate, every one of them rendering Grover Finch's deed worthless. Cole looked at the papers. He looked at Nara. "Why did you not take these to the territorial court yourself?" "A woman with Apache blood walking into a territorial court in Red Rock alone," she said. "You think they would have listened?" He did not answer because the answer was obvious. Cole rolled the documents back into the oilskin, tucked the package carefully inside his jacket. He replaced the flat slab over the empty box. He stood at Caleb's grave for a moment, hat in hand, saying nothing in particular, but meaning something by the silence. They walked back to the cabin. By the time they reached the flat ground, Cole had made up his mind about something. It was not a complicated decision. It was the kind of decision that a man makes when the choice between right and wrong is clear, and he has no excuse left for picking wrong. "I am going to Red Rock," he said. "I am going to take these documents to whoever will listen. If no one in Red Rock listens, I will ride to Tucson. If Tucson sends me away, I will take them all the way to Santa Fe." Nara studied him. "That will make enemies of Decker Price and everyone connected to him." "I have had enemies before. Not like Decker Price." Cole looked at the horizon, where the desert flattened out toward the distant smear of red rock, a brown blur in the heat haze. What does he do, exactly, to people who push back? The answer was in the way she paused. Just a half second. Just long enough. "He made an example of the last man who tried," she said. "A rancher named Holt Vance. Holt rode to Tucson with documents. He never arrived." Cole put his hat back on. "Then I will need to be harder to make an example of." He began saddling his horse. Nara watched him work. After a while, she said, "Why are you doing this? This is not your land. It was never your land." Cole buckled the cinch and turned around. "Because Grover Finch took $42 off me. I take that personally." It was a joke. She knew it was a joke. But something shifted in her expression. Something very small. She looked away at the canyon. "I will ride with you," she said. "As far as the crossroads at Bitter Spring. There is someone there who owes Caleb a debt. He will help you reach Red Rock without using the main road. Cole checked his rifle, checked his saddlebags, checked his water. He was thinking about Holt Vance, who had ridden to Tucson with documents and never arrived. He was thinking about the arrow in the fence post and what it had taken to plant it there alone. "Nara," he said. She turned. "That arrow this morning. Was that a warning for me or for someone else?" She picked up a canvas bag from the cabin doorway and swung it over her shoulder. "For the two men watching from the East Ridge," she said. "They have been watching the cabin for a week, waiting for me to leave." Cole looked at the East Ridge. Flat rock and scrub brush, nothing visible. "They are gone now," she said. "But they will report to Price. He will know someone new is here by nightfall." She was already walking toward the canyon trail. Cole looked once more at the cabin that he had bought and never owned, at the dry garden and the stone well and the lean-to where he had spent a poor night's sleep. Then he stepped up into the saddle and followed her. The desert received them both and closed behind them like water. The crossroads at Bitter Spring was 3 hours of hard riding through country that wanted to kill you in a variety of creative ways. The trail Nara took was not on any map Cole had ever seen. It went through dry washes and over ridges and twice through ground that looked solid until the horses' hooves punched through a crust and they had to pick carefully forward one step at a time. Cole did not complain. She knew this land the way he knew the back streets of San Antonio, by feel and memory rather than by sight. Bitter Spring itself was a flat stretch of alkali ground with a cottonwood tree and an actual spring, small and sulky but real, seeping up from between two flat rocks. There was a ramshackle structure beside it, more lean-to than building, and a man sitting outside it on a barrel who looked as old as the rocks around him. His name was Dub Callan. He was 60 or 70, or possibly older, with a face so weathered it looked carved, and hands that were still hard and steady. He stood when he saw Nara and removed a battered hat with something that was almost courtliness. "Nara Marsh," he said. "I heard the canyon was going to be trouble." "It is trouble," she said. "This is Cole Hardin, and he bought Caleb's deed off Grover Finch." Dub looked at Cole with no particular judgment. "How much did Finch take you for?" $42. Dub shook his head slowly. "Finch is getting cheaper. He took old Pete Delgado for $65. He sat back down on the barrel. "You have the real papers?" Cole touched his jacket. "Inside." "Good. Sit. Drink from the spring. It tastes like old metal, but it will not kill you." He looked at Nara. "You staying?" "No. There are things at the canyon I cannot leave unguarded." Cole understood. If Price's men had been watching the cabin for a week, leaving it empty was not something she would do lightly. He climbed down and walked to her before she turned to go. "Tell me one thing," he said. "How many men does Price run?" "In Red Rock directly? 6 or 8. And he also has men spread on the road to Tucson. That is how Holt Vance was stopped." "Is there another road to Tucson?" "Not one a single rider can take alone." Cole looked at Dub. Dub raised one eyebrow. "I know a way," the old man said. "Longer, rougher. But Price's men do not know it because it requires knowing where the water is." He shrugged. "I know where the water is." "I would be obliged," Cole said. Nara swung back up onto her horse. She had a compact roan mare that moved beautifully, light-footed and quick. She gathered the reins and looked down at Cole. "You come back to Dry Fork Station when this is finished," she said. It was not entirely a request. It was not entirely an order either. It landed somewhere between those two things. "If I come back," Cole said, "where does that leave us exactly? Because on paper I still own the deed." "On paper," she said. "Caleb's paper is better than your paper." "Caleb's paper wins," Cole agreed. "But I spent 4 days in the saddle and $42 I did not have to spare." Something close to amusement moved through her eyes. "Then I will owe you $42. Interest included," Cole said. She turned the mare and rode back into the desert without looking back. Dub watched her go. "How long have you known her?" he asked. "Since yesterday morning." Dub nodded like that explained something. "Caleb was a lucky man," he said. "Fool who got himself killed, but lucky while he lived." He stood and stretched. "We leave at dark. In the meantime, tell me everything Price's men did and what road they were watching from. Details matter." Cole told him. Dub listened with his eyes closed and his hands folded in his lap. And Cole had the impression of a man filing information in very organized internal shelves. When Cole finished, Dub opened his eyes. "Price will move fast," Dub said. "When his watchers report back and tell him the cabin is not empty and someone new is riding out with documents, he will not wait. He will send men tonight." "To the canyon?" "To both roads." Dub looked at him directly. "The woman can handle herself, Cole. You need to stay focused on your piece of this. Get those papers to Tucson. There is a federal land agent there named William Soto. He is honest. I know that because Price has tried 3 times to have him removed and failed. Get those papers to Soto." Cole absorbed this. "And if Price's men catch up to us on the road?" Dub smiled, and it was not a comforting smile. "I did not say the road was safe. I said they would not know where the water is. 2 different things." He went inside the lean-to and came back with a rifle, a bedroll, and a canvas sack that clinked with the weight of cartridges. He was moving with a purpose that erased 20 years from the way he walked. Cole checked his own rifle again and filled his canteen from the sulky little spring. The water tasted exactly like old metal, and he drank every drop he could hold. The sun went down red and hard over the western ridge. Cole sat in the cooling dark and thought about Decker Price, whom he had never met and already understood. He had known men like Price in 3 different states. Men who used paper and distance and other people's ignorance as weapons. Men who never rode out to do their own dirty work and therefore thought they were clean. He thought about Nara alone at that cabin, and he pushed that thought aside because it did not help him. He thought about the real deed in his jacket, crisp inside its oilskin, carrying the weight of everything Caleb Marsh had built and everything that had been taken. Dub came out and sat beside him. They did not talk. The desert made its night sounds. Somewhere far away, a horse was running, and the hoofbeats came thin and small across the still air before fading. "That is not one of ours," Dub said. Cole nodded. They left at full dark, riding without lanterns, Dub in front, trusting the horses to read the ground. The road Dub Callan knew was not a road at all, in any sense that Cole understood the word. It was a sequence of decisions, and each one based on landmarks that made sense only if you had been across this ground before. A particular rock formation that looked like a kneeling man, a dry fork where you took the left branch because the right branch died in a box canyon after 3 miles, a series of low hills where the trail disappeared completely into flat ground, and you had to navigate by the stars until it reappeared. Cole kept close behind Dub and kept his mouth shut. The old man moved through the dark like he had lived his whole life without needing light, which in certain ways he probably had. They rode 4 hours before Dub stopped and held up one hand. Cole pulled up beside him. Ahead, At the edge of a shallow rise, there was a fire. Small, banked down, but visible. Two shapes beside it. Dub leaned close. Price's men check this pass sometimes when things are moving. Not often. Tonight they are checking. How many? Two here. There is likely a third watching the horses. Cole studied the fire. The two shapes were sitting, rifles across their laps, not looking at the pass because they were looking at each other, talking. A third man with the horses meant three total, all of them between where Cole was and where he needed to be. We go around, Dub said. Hard around, east. There's a dry creek bed. Takes us below the rise. How long? 2 hours extra. Cole measured that against riding into 3 armed men in the dark. East, he said. They swung wide and moved down into the creek bed, the horses picking their way carefully through the loose rock. It was slow and brutal going, but the kind of riding that tests every joint in a man's body. Cole kept his breathing controlled and his attention on the rocks and stayed close to Dub. At the 2-hour mark, they came up out of the creek bed onto flat ground, and the fire was a tiny orange dot somewhere behind and above them. Dub took a long drink from his canteen. First light in about 2 hours, he said. We ride straight from here. They rode straight. The sky went from black to deep gray to the pale silver of early morning, and the desert opened up wide and flat, and Cole could see for miles in every direction, which meant anyone behind them could also see for miles. He did not look back more than was necessary. The town of Red Rock appeared at mid-morning, low and dusty, a cluster of adobe and timber buildings in a shallow valley. They did not ride into it. We do not stop here, Dub said. I thought you were taking me to Tucson. I am, but there is someone in Red Rock I need to warn. He turned to Cole. You keep riding. The Tucson road splits from the main trail 2 miles east of town. Take the split south. I will catch up by midday. Cole looked at him. What are you not telling me? Dub's face was difficult to read under all those years of weather. Decker Price is going to know you are heading for Tucson. His fastest rider left that canyon at first light this morning, if my guess is right. That means Price knows already, which means there are men ahead of you on the Tucson road, not just behind. Cole felt the geometry of it settle cold in his chest. Who are you warning in Red Rock? He asked. A man named Clem Adair. He runs the feed store, and he has been gathering information on Price for 2 years. Every crooked deed, every bribed official, every piece of paper. He has been waiting for someone to carry it all to Tucson at once. Cole stared at him. He has documents too. Better than documents, Dub said. He has a written statement from Grover Finch. Finch got scared 3 months ago and started writing down what he knew. Gave it to Clem because Clem was the only man in Red Rock he trusted. So Finch knew he was cheating people, Cole said. Finch knew everything. He just needed enough fear to get honest. Cole thought about $42 and 4 days in the saddle and an arrow in a fence post. He thought about Holt Vance, who had ridden to Tucson alone with documents and never arrived. When he thought about what it would mean to arrive in Tucson with Caleb Marsh's papers and Grover Finch's written statement and 2 years of Clem Adair's evidence, all at once, all together, too large a package to quietly bury. I will wait for you, Cole said. At the split, midday. Dub nodded. If I am not there by midday, you ride without me. He paused. And you do not go back to that canyon until this is done. She is safer if Price thinks she is alone and no longer a concern. Cole understood the logic. He hated it, but he understood it. He rode east. The split came up exactly as Dub had described, a fork in the trail where a sun-bleached post had once stood, the post now knocked over. lying in the dust. Cole took the south branch and stopped in the shade of a red rock bluff and waited. The desert was completely quiet. He pulled the oilskin package from his jacket and checked the documents one more time. Caleb Marsh's deed, the governor's letter, the survey map, all of them clean and clear. He wrapped them back carefully and tucked them away. He checked his rifle. He checked his sidearm. He drank the last of his water and sat in the shade with his horse and watched the two trails. At midday, Dub appeared on the main road, riding fast for an old man, and beside him was another rider, shorter, heavier, riding a gray mule that was moving with surprising speed. Cole rode out to meet them. The second man was Clem Adair, broad-faced and sunburned, with the look of someone who had been waiting a very long time for something to finally happen. Under his arm, he carried a leather satchel, worn at the corners, buckled shut. "You are Cole Hardin," Clem said, not as a question. "I am." Clem held out the satchel. 2 years, he said. "Take it." Cole took it. "William Soto," Dub said. "Federal land agent. His office is on the main square in Tucson. You will know the building by the flag." "How far?" Cole asked. 6 hours if we ride clean." Cole looked at the two of them, both old enough to know what was ahead, both sitting still. "You are not riding with me," he said. "We will slow you down," Dub said. "And Price does not know about Clem yet. If Clem disappears from Red Rock today and things go wrong in Tucson, there is no one left to start over." Cole held the satchel. He felt the weight of it, on paper and patience, and 2 years of quiet courage from a man running a feed store who had decided a long time ago that he was not going to look the other way. "If I do not make it to Soto," Cole said, "what is the next step?" "There is no next step," Dub said. "This is the step." Cole put the satchel in his saddlebag alongside the oilskin. He looked at both men once more. He thought about what he was riding into, the men ahead on the road, Price's network, the crooked sheriff and the bought officials, and all the machinery of dishonest power that had been running smooth and unchallenged in this territory for years. He was one man on one horse with a bag full of paper. He turned south and rode. The first man was waiting at a dry creek crossing 6 miles out of Red Rock. Cole saw him when he was still 200 yards back, now sitting his horse in the middle of the trail in a way that meant he was not planning to move. A second horse shape, higher up on the creek bank. 2 of them. Cole slowed to a walk. The man in the trail was young, maybe 22, with a clean hat and a polished rifle laid across his saddle. Not a range hand. A hired man, the kind Price would recruit with good wages and no questions. "That is far enough," the young man said. Cole stopped. "I am heading to Tucson on legitimate business." "Nobody said you were not. We just need to see what you are carrying." Cole looked at the second man on the bank. He had a rifle too, up and loose, not aimed, but ready. 2 men with rifles in the creek behind them. No room to ride around without putting his back to one of them. "I am carrying personal documents," Cole said. Nothing of concern to you." "Let us be the judge of that." Cole measured the distance. 20 yards to the young man in the trail, maybe 35 to the one on the bank. His rifle was in the scabbard. His sidearm was on his hip. He had done things he did not talk about during that year. He did not talk about. This was one of those moments when that year was useful. "Tell Decker Price," Cole said, "that the documents he is looking for are already in Tucson." The young man's eyes flicked. Just for a second. Just long enough. Cole put his horse hard left off the trail, into the scrub brush on the near bank, and the rifle shot from behind him hit rock where he had been sitting a half-second before. He was already low and moving, pushing through the brush at a dead run. And the second shot went wide because the man on the bank had to swing, and the swing took time. Cole went into the creek bed at an angle, rock and sand under the horse's hooves, the animal driving hard without needing to be asked. And he came up the far side, already 50 yards clear and running. He heard them shouting. He heard horses moving. He did not look back. He rode. The miles went by in pieces. Hard ground and scrub and the flat, bright sky above him. He checked behind him twice, saw one rider for a while, and then nothing. Either he had lost them, or they had given up, or they had ridden ahead by another route to cut him off. He kept moving. 3 miles out of Tucson, the road widened, and other riders appeared. Ordinary people going ordinary places. And Cole allowed himself one full breath. He came into Tucson at mid-afternoon. They rode straight to the main square, found the building with the federal flag, tied his horse, and walked in. William Soto was at his desk. He was a compact man in his 40s with clean eyeglasses and an ordered desk, and the patient look of a man who had seen a great deal of dishonesty and had not been defeated by any of it. Cole put the oilskin package and the leather satchel on the desk. "My name is Cole Hardin," he said. "I need you to read what is in those." Soto looked at him. He looked at the packages. He looked at Cole's trail dust and his expression and the particular quality of urgency that Cole was holding under tight control. He opened the oilskin first. Cole sat down in the chair across the desk. He had been in the saddle most of the past 2 days, and his back felt like it had been rearranged by someone hostile, but he sat straight. Soto read in silence for 10 minutes. He opened the satchel. He read for another 20 minutes. His expression did not change, except around his eyes, which got very still and very focused. He set the last document down. "Decker Price," he said. "Yes," Cole said. "I have been waiting for something like this for 3 years," Soto said quietly. He looked at Cole. "How did you come to have these?" Cole told him the whole story, from Grover Finch's office to the arrow in the fence post to the grave in the canyon to Dub Callan and Clem Adair and the 2 men at the creek crossing. He told it plainly and in order and left nothing out. Soto listened without interrupting. When Cole finished, Soto stood. He called out to someone in the back of the office. A younger man appeared. "Ride to the marshal's office," Soto told him. "Tell Marshal Cord I need him here in 1 hour. Tell him to bring 2 deputies." The young man left at a run. Soto looked at Cole. "Price will move to destroy records the moment he knows these documents are here. We have a narrow window." He paused. "The woman at the canyon, Nara Marsh." "Yes. Is she safe?" Cole thought about the arrow in the fence post, driven clean and precise from some hidden position. He thought about the way she had walked out of that canyon without a sound and stood 10 feet from him without a weapon showing and without fear. "Safer than most," he said. "We will send men to Dry Fork Station anyway," Soto said. "As a precaution?" Cole nodded. He sat back in the chair, and for the first time in 2 days, he let the road tension out of his shoulders. The documents were on the desk of a federal land agent. The case was in motion. The machinery that had run smooth and crooked for years in this territory had just taken a hard wrench thrown into its gears. It was not finished. There would be lawyers and hearings, and Price would hire his own men and fight every inch of it. These things took time. But the wheel had turned. Marshal Cord arrived in 40 minutes with 3 deputies. He read the document standing up. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he looked at Soto. "I will need a federal warrant." "You will have one before dark," Soto said. Cole stood up. He had one more thing to do. He walked back to his horse, took the empty saddlebag, and walked to the nearest store. He bought 2 canteens, a bag of coffee, a sack of dried provisions, and a box of cartridges. He rode south out of Tucson as the sun dropped toward the western mountains. 6 hours back the way he had come, past the creek crossing where the 2 hired men were long gone, past the fork and the knocked-over post, past Bitter Spring in the dark, no light at the lean-to. Dub already gone or waiting somewhere quiet. He came to Dry Fork Station in the deep of night. There was a small fire going in front of the cabin. Not a careless fire, a deliberate one, controlled and positioned so that it lit the open ground around the cabin from any approach. Nara was sitting beside it. She did not stand when she heard his horse. She listened to the hoofbeats, and she knew them by the time he came into the fire's light, the same way she knew every sound in this canyon, by memory and attention. Cole dismounted. He led his horse to the lean-to and unsaddled it. He carried the provisions inside and set them on the stone shelf. He came back out and sat down by the fire. For a while, neither of them spoke. "Soto has the documents," he said. "A federal warrant is being drawn tonight. Price will be arrested by morning." Nara looked at the fire. "Clemadaire is safe," Cole said. "Dub made it back. The 2 men at the creek crossing are gone." "I know about the creek crossing," she said. "One of them came here looking. I persuaded him to leave." Cole decided not to ask about the method of persuasion. The fire settled, an ember popped. The canyon was dark and silent all the way to the stars. "The land is yours," Cole said. "Caleb's papers are in the federal record now. No one is taking Dry Fork Station." Nara was quiet for a moment. And your $42? "Grover Finch will be answering for a number of things," Cole said. "I expect the money is somewhere on that list." She almost smiled. It was a small thing, half a second in the firelight, but it was real. "You said you would come back when it was finished," she said. "It is not entirely finished," Cole said. "There will be proceedings. Soto will want testimony. I will need to be available for some time." She looked at him directly. "The lean-to is not comfortable." "No," he said. "It is not." "Caleb built a second sleeping room at the back of the cabin," she said. "He never finished it. There are walls and a roof, but no door yet." Cole thought about that. No door is better than a lean-to. "Yes," she said. "It is." The fire burned down to coals. The desert cooled around them. Somewhere in the canyon, a night bird called once and went quiet. Cole looked out at the land that had never been his and thought about the 3 years Caleb Marsh had spent building something in this hard ground, and the woman who had stood alone in a canyon guarding what was left of it, and the arrow in the fence post that had started all of this, and $42 that had turned out to be the cheapest thing he had ever spent. He did not know what came next exactly. The law would move at the law's pace. Price would fight. Things would be complicated for a while in the way that true things are always complicated before they settle. But the land was safe. He looked at Nara beside the dying fire. Her face turned toward the canyon. She knew better than he would ever know anything. And he thought that a man could do worse than to learn a canyon like that. One trail at a time, with someone worth learning it alongside. He did not say any of that. He put more wood on the fire, and the flames came back up. And they sat together in the warmth of it, while the Arizona night went on around them. Wide and old and indifferent to everything except the people stubborn enough to stay.